What's up? What's up? Hello Orchid fans, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. It's been a while and there's been a lot going on here in Scotland. And one of these things is I pretty much give up my collection. So I wanted to update you guys on what I've got left, how I rearranged it all. It's all been kind of changed. So let's just jump right in and I'll show you what it looks like. So here is what I've got now. We are in the living room now. I used to keep my orchids in the spare bedroom. And, you know, I had a shelf completely kind of specifically set up for orchids with lights, with all kinds of, you know, fans and everything. And now I've kind of completely changed it. And I had a video on maybe having an IKEA shelf, and I'll link that video below, and I'll put it at the end of this one as well, so you can see what my plans initially were if you're interested. But I actually changed my mind and I moved to this kind of setup. So basically, you know, I wanted to have my orchids kind of just visible, basically, you know. And yeah, I found that, you know, I'm a lot less in the spare bedroom now that I'm working in the office. I used to work from home and I used to stay in that room. So I used to be near my orchids all the time, whereas now I barely get to see them. And I kind of felt like I'm losing interest in them, and watering them and repotting them was just a chore rather than enjoyment and a hobby. So I wanted to change things up a bit, and I thought I'll bring them into the living room, and hopefully, you know, now that I can see them more and kind of I pass them all the time, maybe, you know, that will kind of just spark my interest, you know, again for orchids. But this setup means that, you know, I don't have as much space now, so I had to reduce my collection significantly. At some point I had, you know, about 50 plants, and right now I think there is maybe about 15. So it's a significant reduction, but let's get in closer. I'll show you what I've got, and I'll do a bit of an update of, you know, what's going on with these plants and what are the plans. So yeah. So first off, this is my very first Phalaenopsis. It's white Phalaenopsis. You can see it's got a spike. I actually broke the spike when I was watering it a while ago, but thank goodness it shot the, it's got the kind of branch shooting out. So there is some buds already, you know, slightly visible. So hopefully we'll see some blooms soon. It's quite big. It's in a 12 centimeter pot, but you can see there is a lot of roots around. So yeah, this one is growing pretty well. And then this is my Oceocleides spatulifera, and you can see it's got a new growth at the front with the two leaves on. It used to grow from the other side, and that's what I thought it was gonna grow, so I planted it that way, and then of course it had to grow from the other side. But it's growing pretty well. I actually got it in dirt because it is a terrestrial orchid. So you can see it's kind of mixed with ceramis, perlite, and basically a succulent, you know, soil basically suitable for succulents. So yeah, it seems to grow pretty well, and it's got, you can see at the front, it's got the new roots coming out of this new growth. So it seems to be enjoying this new media. And then right here, I've got this kind of mini community pot. It's a 9 centimeter pot. It's got Vanda in here, so Falcata Gojo Fukurin, and then this one is Cattleya schilleriana, a teeny tiny seedling. So they're growing both together in here, and you know, I can see already that, you know, they were doing a lot better when they were on the shelves, you know, with the light, and now they seem to have stalled a little bit. So we'll see how they get on. And then down the shelf, I've got my Psychopsis. So this one has got 3 spikes. It's grown this spike just recently. It hasn't bloomed yet because every time it pushes out a bud, it actually dries out and drops. So, and these ones are doing the same. You can see how many buds it tried to grow and they all just kind of fall off. So we'll see if it keeps doing that, but I'm not too worried about it. You know, I feel like Psychopsis, they need some rest as well. And, you know, they're constantly developing buds. These are, you know, sequential bloomers. So in theory, you know, they can bloom for decades on the same spike. So I'm not worried that, you know, it's just kind of trying to basically recover a bit. It's got a new growth at the back as well. I don't know if I'll be able to show you, but hopefully you can see this little growth there. So, you know, it is doing stuff. And then this is my primary hybrid Phalaenopsis. When I got it, it was a seedling, and it's grown those 2 leaves at the top, and they're massive. They're so big. So I hope this one keeps growing well. This one has a really, really long name. You can see it there, but it's basically a, you know, a summer bloomer, basically, you know, so not a complex hybrid, but it's not exactly a primary hybrid either because it's got more than just 2 species in it, so it's kind of in between. And then this is my Angraecum aloefolium. It's a miniature orchid. It's one of my favorites, so, you know, there was no way I would get rid of this one. I think this one will struggle slightly as well, you know, growing it like that because I think it needs a bit more light, but it's not too bad. I put some moss on it. It used to be live moss, but I feel like it's probably dead by now. But it actually helped to kind of retain moisture in the pot because the pot is so tiny. It always used to dry out, you know, very, very quickly. So, but actually, you know, this environment here is going to be a lot more, you know, it's going to retain water a lot more because there is no fan. So the pots are not drying out so quickly anymore. And that's why you can see, you know, I put them in these blue containers. So there is a bit more air around the pots. And some pots you can see have holes in them, which is great because it helps to kind of, you know, for the water to evaporate out of the pots. Some of them don't, like this Psychopsis, you see like it doesn't have any holes. So I'm going to have to change this up probably in spring and move it into a pot with holes or just put holes in this pot because they need that in winter in this, you know, in this kind of new environment. I usually keep my pots like in these kind of ceramic white pots. So they're all in the same, you know, design pots. So they looked really pretty. But I think, you know, it's a bit too much. It can't dry out. So I changed it for the winter and then we'll see. And then on this shelf, I've got another Phalaenopsis. When I got this Phalaenopsis, it had yellow blooms and they're so, so pretty. So I couldn't give up this orchid. The blooms are spectacular. It hasn't actually regrown a spike for me yet. It grew 1 leaf and then this other leaf here is still growing. So hopefully, you know, we'll get some spikes soon, but I can't see anything in the crevices. You can see the roots are growing pretty well. There is, you know, roots in the pot as well. So it is, you know, doing really well. So hopefully the blooms will come. I mean, I normally don't have issues with complex phals, you know, and growing spikes and stuff. So hopefully that one will be okay. And this is my Dendrobium speciosum Maizuru. I split this orchid up because it just couldn't stay in this small pot anymore and I can't up-pot them anymore. You know, I don't have the space for it, so I had to keep it in this small pot. So I split it up and it's doing really well. So this one, I love it because you see these newer growths, they've got these like white leaves with a bit of kind of green. Whereas the older growths, they kind of turn into green leaves eventually. And then I have this brand new growth. They grow super fast. This only started growing maybe a couple of weeks ago and look at it. It's already, you know, developing good leaves and it's so pretty. The markings on the leaves, look at it. Like every growth is different. Every leaf is different. I love this orchid. So of course it had to stay in my collection, even if it's just a division. It never bloomed for me, and I don't know if it ever will, but you know, it's too pretty, you know, not to have, so I had to keep it. And then this is my Renanthera monachica. It actually bloomed recently for me while it was still on the shelves, and it had 2 spikes on. They were not, you know, the best, but it's the first time it gave me 2 spikes at the same time. Again, it's been growing super well, but I have a feeling that, you know, it's not going to be growing as well anymore because it is a higher light orchid and, you know, it's not really getting that light anymore. Overall, it's doing pretty well. It's got, you know, good roots. The leaves keep growing. It's a healthy plant, so hopefully it will keep kind of doing well. What I was thinking to do is maybe get like a decorative kind of light, you know, to just kind of arch over, like that, and just kind of, you know, the light would be just above. It won't get, you know, masses of light, but I think it will still be quite good because, I mean, our daylight in Scotland is really rubbish in winter. We probably get maybe 6-7 hours, so, you know, it's really not enough. And I could put a grow light in there as well, you know, in that kind of lamp. As long as it's not purple, it will, you know, it will be fine. So yeah, I'm kind of still thinking about it, you know, but I'm not rushing anywhere. I'm just, you know, orchids are slow growers, and it means, you know, they're not gonna die in a day either. So they can survive one winter with less light, and I just need to accept that they're probably gonna grow less, and that's okay. So we are going one shelf down. So this shelf, I've got my epidendrum. It's a no ID, but let me lift it up a bit because there is just so many leaves. But look at it, it's so tall. My dog actually kind of got in the way of this plant, and the plant fell on the floor. So you can see the top of the small growth has been broken, and a few leaves were broken off as well. But that's okay. Overall, it's actually still good. The new growth, you know, it wasn't damaged, so it's still growing from the top. You can see there's a small leaf still growing, so this is not done growing yet. You can see how big it is. The previous growth, which is the tallest one on here, it bloomed for, honestly, I'm not lying, it must have been about 4 months. This plant is like, you know, it's also kind of a sequential bloomer. So the you know, the new flowers keep coming out to the top as the bottom ones are dropping. So it had a massive spike. It was arching over and kind of spiraling even, you know, it was so long. And it's got very pretty orange flowers. So this one is doing really well for me. And I think it will do well in the living room as well. This one doesn't need any kind of special requirements, doesn't really need, you know, super high light or anything. So I think it should do pretty well here as well. And then this one here, let me see the tag. It's Bangkok Sunset. I know that, but you know, the actual name. So it's Rancostylis periara, if I'm pronouncing it right, Bangkok Sunset. It is a seedling. It grew 2 leaves for me so far. You can see I actually burned this leaf as it was growing under my lights, you know, in my old setup. So I had to pull it down to get less light anyway. So maybe it's not as high light as I'm thinking because, you know, Vandaceous orchids are usually pretty high light. So it's growing a new leaf from the top, but it's been kind of stalling. So I don't know if it's kind of how long it's going to take for it to grow this leaf. It is a tiny seedling, as you can see. So, you know, it's not like it's going to, you know, shoot out flowers anytime soon. But I like this orchid. If it does flower at some point for me in, you know, very distant future, the flowers are just spectacular. So, you know, I hope it actually does well and blooms at some point. And this one here, this is Dendrobium Boda. Let me just move those other plants away before I drop them. So this one, I got it as a seedling, but it was a very, you know, well-established seedling when I got it. And it grows and bloomed. This is the oldest growth that is growing at the moment. it's doing really well still. You can see there is leaves still there, so it's not finished growing yet. It's got some growing to do. You can see it's kind of growing towards, the window. The window is shut now because it's complete darkness. But yeah, it's growing towards the light. So I'm thinking to maybe try and turn it around like that so that, if it still tries to reach the light, it kind of maybe pushes itself like that. Because otherwise it's going to be quite, it will take up a lot of space. This grove here was growing before, and I went on holiday, and even though like they were not overwatered or anything, but I had to move them out of the shells because I wanted to shut the electricity off. And I moved them to the windowsills to kind of, for them to still get a bit of light. And for some reason, this grove just kind of started rotting off at the top. So I took the top off and, peeled like all these sheaves off. And it was still green at the base. So I left it like that, because it wasn't rotting or anything. And it's still, it's not rotten. I left it like that. I knew it's not gonna kind of start growing again. But this new growth is actually coming from this little tiny, rotten growth. So, and you can see it's actually quite tall. I think it's almost as tall as this one, if not, I think it might even get taller than that eventually. So it's growing well. And I think, again, this one will do well in the living room, because, periodas, they don't really need much special care. They are doing well in kind of moderate light. They don't need, like super high humidity or anything. So yeah, I think it will do okay. And then this one at the bottom. So this is my Sherry Baby, on Sidium Sherry Baby. Again, I split it up. I had it, in a massive pot, and there was maybe 3 plants in there. So I kind of separated them apart, and, this is one of the pieces, which was kind of, I think, the best piece. And it's growing a new growth here at the front. I don't know, I feel like it's maybe feeling a bit dehydrated, but it is a bit weird because look at this root system. It is pretty good. So I don't know why it's kind of complaining. Because the previous growth, this one there, you can see it's got a concertina leaf. So that one, when it was growing, it definitely was dehydrated because I just repotted the plant at that time and I took a lot of roots off, knowing that this plant is growing roots like really quickly and really well. But obviously for this growth, it just was a bit too much. So it had concertina leaves and it didn't develop properly. You can see the bulb is fairly small as well, if you compare it to something like this. But, I thought that this growth is going to be fine because it's now got plenty of roots there. So, but yeah, I sometimes, when this leaf develops enough, I just kind of, split it with my finger a little bit. And then it's fine. It kind of, it opens up and you can see there's another leaf in the middle there. So I'm sure it will kind of keep growing and it will be okay. But again, on Sidium Sherry Baby, the blooms are amazing. It doesn't need any special care, humidity or highlight or anything. So I think it will do pretty well in this setup. So, fingers crossed. And then I also got some orchids on the windowsill. This is a north-facing window, so there is never direct light or sunlight, I should say, coming here. So unless it's, in the middle of summer and it's earlier in the morning or very late evening, which, at that point the sun is not strong enough to kind of do any damage. So I have these 3 plants here. Of course, I couldn't just fit everything on that little shelf. I had to keep a couple more orchids. So let's zoom in a little bit. This is another Phalaenopsis. It's got a name. I think it's Aoran. Yeah. So I had to keep this one because, these leaves are just stunning. And it grows really well for me. It doesn't like to keep a lot of leaves, apparently. It could only have like 2 or 3 leaves. And every time a new one grows, it just drops the bottom ones. But that doesn't stop it from blooming. These are not, this is not the best blooming. Only 3 blooms, it's not much. But To be honest, I would prefer it, to actually grow a leaf rather than grow those blooms, but I'll let it do it. It's not dying or anything. It's not doing badly. I mean, the roots are fairly reasonable. There's some in the pot, like some kind of at the top. So, this plant is doing well, so it can stay there. I don't even know what this plant is called. It's obviously not an orchid. I got it as a gift, and it's growing pretty well. It's got some blooms here as well. So yeah, it's just hanging out in here as well. Oh, I just noticed there's another bloom coming out of there. So yeah, it didn't bloom for me for ages. I got it in bloom, and then those blooms dropped pretty quickly, and then it just didn't grow any blooms for ages. And I honestly don't know how to even look after it, so I've not even reported it ever because I'm afraid to do it wrong. So it's just, I just water it and it grows, seems to be okay. And then last but not least, this is my Olia EPI. And, this is probably one of my favorite orchids in my whole collection. So there was no way this was going anywhere. Even though I have a feeling that, it's probably not gonna grow very well for me now, because this is a super highlight orchid. It's a desert orchid, basically, and, it basically can grow in direct sunlight almost. So, yeah, a north-facing window, it's not gonna do it, not gonna cut it for it, but we'll just see how it goes for now. But you can see even when it was under my shelves, like, look at this growth. This is tiny bulb. The one before is kind of okay, but still it's, thin and long, whereas, this is what I got. I just got one bulb, but look how fat it is, and it's got 2 leaves. These other 2 grows only gave me 1 leaf each, so it's not ideal. And it's growing this new growth. And honestly, I was very seriously thinking to keep this one plant on my shelf, under light, so it's kind of warm and really bright, and see if this growth would do any better. But because I, moved everything else, I didn't want to keep one plant separately, because then I know I'll forget to water it, forget to feed it, etc. So, I had to move it together with everybody else. I might move it back to those shelves, when I get a lamp and the light, and I'll put it on the very top shelf so that it gets, the most light it can get. But while there is no lights there, I thought maybe actually on the windowsill it will get more light. So yeah, we'll see. This one is kind of the same as Oceoclades, in the same mix, kind of terrestrial type of mix. But I think it is enjoying it. I can't really see much roots apart from here. And I think this is a fresh root coming from this new growth. So, it's not dying or anything, but I am kind of keeping a close eye on it. I water it very rarely because, obviously this mix is keeping a lot of water for a very long time. So this one gets watered maybe every 3 weeks. And I try to give it like very little water, because you can see these bulbs, they can obviously keep a lot of water and a lot of nutrients in here. And you can see they're not shriveled whatsoever. So yeah, that's basically, that's how I'm growing it at the moment. And that is it, you guys. So as you can see, a massive change to my setup, in the way I'm keeping my orchids. I think there will be quite a few repots coming up as well, because I need to change basically all these mixes. Some of them have moss in them and kind of more, water retentive media. And I needed that because I had fans running all the time. So, the media, the pods dried out really quickly. Whereas now when, they're all sitting like that, no fans, no nothing, they're actually, not drying out at all, especially now when it's cooler and they're not growing as well. So I'll have to change them up. So, there will be some videos definitely in the spring. I know it's a long time till then, so I'll do some update videos in between as well. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.